So in this screencast, we're going to look at variables in the microbit. So when we're talking about variables, what do we mean? Well, a variable is an area of storage. It has a name and a value, and it can have numeric or other values. So you can have a number of different types of variables. There are Boolean variables. So a Boolean variable just has a true and a false value. You can have string values for things like names. You can have character values for initials, and then you can also have the numerical ones. We will generally be using numeric variables and string variables. So as I mentioned there, you can use variables to store information such as a person's name, a score in a game, and various different things like that. And a variable is a really important concept to get across to your students, because it's really important that they understand how variables work and how they can be used to increase the complexity of a particular program that you have. So when you have a variable, you can create it giving it a name. Now it's really important again that you give it a name that means something, because if you're just naming it variable 1, variable 2, variable 3, then it doesn't make any sense, because you'll come back and then you won't remember what that particular variable does. So when you're naming your variable, you should always name it something related to what that variable is going to store and what it's going to be used for. You can give it an initial value, and that's known as initializing a variable, and you can also change the value of the variable. So we're going to create a counter project now, and within that project we're going to create a counter variable, and then when the button A is pressed, we're going to add 1 to the counter. When the B button is pressed, we're going to subtract 1 from the counter, and finally when the A and B buttons are pressed together, we're going to display the value of the counter. So in makecode.com we're going to create our project, our counter project. I'm just going to get rid of the forever because I don't need it. Now what I'm going to do is on start, I'm going to initialize my variable. So I need to create my variable first. So I'll go into variables here, and you'll see that there's already one called item. I'm going to make a variable, and I'm just going to call it counter because that's what I want the variable to do. It's going to be a counter. So I'm going to click OK on that. Now once I have it created, you'll see here I can set the value to something, and I can change that value by something. If I click on the arrow here, I can get my counter. So I'm just going to move that up into the on start. I'm going to change item to counter. So when the microbit starts, the counter is going to be set to 0. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to on button A pressed, and when the A button is pressed, we change the counter by 1. So I'm going to just press the A button here. Now nothing seems to be happening, but actually it is changing the counter in the background. I just haven't coded anything to show the value yet. We'll do that in a minute. I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to duplicate the entire thing, because on the B button I'm going to change the counter by -1. Okay, so again, if I press the B button, it doesn't look like anything's happening at the moment, but I'm just going to do the final bit, which is the on button A plus B pressed, and when the A and B button are pressed together, I want to show the number, and the number I want to show is the value that is in the counter variable. So I can just drag that across and drop it in on top of the 0. So now what will happen is when I press the A and B button together, it will show the value of the counter. So if I just click on here, it's showing it as 0 because I pressed A a couple of times and I pressed B a couple of times. If I press A now again 1, 2, 3 times and show it, then it's showing it as 3. If I press the B button twice, it should show the value of counter as 1. If I restart the simulator and show the value, it's going to show it as 0. I'm going to press A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. It should show me 5. Press B 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times and show the value, and it's showing it as -1. Again, if I restart the simulator, I'm pressing the A button 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, B 1, 2, so it should show me 3. And that's exactly what it's showing. So that's just a very simple project which is using variables. Now there's a couple of other things I just want to go through with you. If you find that you have created a project and you just you don't want it anymore, you can go over here to settings and you can just delete a project. So sometimes it's hard to find these things. So just a couple of other things, just as you're into the microbit now, you can click delete project here and that will delete the entire project. Remember, we need to also give it a name. So I'm just going to call it counter. And if I just save that. So we have looked at variables and what they are. We've looked at how we can create them. We've looked at how we can change their values. And we just put that all together in a little project where we are just creating a very simple counter variable that adds 1 and subtracts 1 based on the various buttons. But this is something that you could use in your classroom if you wanted to get, one of your students to check how many students are actually in today. You could just have a little microbit as your tally counter as such. So I hope you found that useful.